They tried to shut them up.
There's no guarantee to free speech.
They tried to cancel them.
Deplatforming works.
They even threw them in jail.
Peter Navarro,
Steve Bannon,
now in prison.
But they couldn't stop them.
It's not a prison bill that will ever shut me up.
This is America's Voice Live.
And welcome to America's Voice Live. I'm Steve Gurr.
The pulse of the people.
We need somebody that's going to hear the people's voice.
The truth the mainstream won't touch.
This guy is, by definition, a globalist.
And the stories that matter.
Rav's own Ben Berquam.
Right up over this hill, yellow arm cartel. I see him.
Live.
Breaking news right now here on Real America's Voice.
Unfiltered.
These people are domestic terrorists.
And unapologetic.
We're here to take a stand for God and country. Does feel good, doesn't it?
America's Voice Live starts now.
And welcome to America's Voice Live. I'm Steve Gurr. It is Friday, the 25th of April. Let's get to the day's top stories. This week I had the wonderful opportunity to interview Jenny Korn, the White House Director of Faith. I'll show you that interview in its entirety coming up. You don't want to miss that. Also, 2 liberal judges caught aiding illegals, one in Milwaukee, another in New Mexico. Both have been arrested. Are activist courts finally facing consequences? That story coming up. And then later, Donald Trump takes aim at Harvard, calling to strip it of its tax-exempt status over woke policies and anti-American activism. Will the Ivy League giant finally face consequences? All of that and so much more coming up today on Real America's Voice. Thank you for being here today. The war between Ukraine and Russia could be reaching a pivotal turning point as President Trump continues to facilitate a peace deal between the two nations. President Trump has urged Russian President Vladimir Putin to stop his attacks in Ukraine while also stating that Crimea will stay with Russia. Meantime, President Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, arrived in Moscow earlier today, where he is expected to meet with Vladimir Putin to further discuss how to get a peace deal in place. Trump has stated that there had been significant progress in peace talks with both nations. He also stated that he has his own deadline for the peace deal to be put together. And if it's not secured, he says we could just walk away and you guys are on your own. Here with me to sort it out further is former CIA Senior Operations Officer Rick De La Torre. Rick, good to have you here. Look, where do we go from here? It's been back and forth. We saw what happened with Zelensky in the Oval Office. Thought that there was a deal at hand. That blew up. A couple of weeks after that, we heard that rare earth mineral deal was back in place. It fell apart. Rick, it just feels like it's a lot of missed opportunities. Oh, we can do this, then it gets pulled away. We can do this, it gets pulled away. What are we to believe?
Yeah, nailed it right on the head. I think it's hard to get two people to negotiate and to come to terms when they've been warring with each other, when both of them or neither of them are being honest with each other or acknowledging the challenges that they face. The issue here is, Putin is obviously interested in maximizing and getting as much as he can for on his side of the deal, right? And that's just the way that is. It shouldn't be news that Crimea is going to stay with Russia. That happened over 11 years ago. It's not part of this ongoing conflict now. Not exactly sure why that came up or how that becomes a negotiation topic. And also, it doesn't help that Vladimir Putin continues to target civilian sites within Ukraine. So I think Trump's tweet and his recent comments are spot on. It's like, look, we're here to broker peace. I'm going to try to be as neutral as I can between two warring parties, but you guys have to come to the table and do that hard work. And kudos for him for trying to do that.
Agreed. Look, the great point about Crimea, by the way, that's 11 years gone. And the EU didn't step up to do anything about it then. Barack Obama didn't do anything about it then. And yet somehow it's back on the table. I've got news for President Zelensky. That's not going to happen. It is the Russians' key naval base on the Black Sea. They're not giving it up. Not now and not ever. I can guarantee you that. The Donbass and other regions of eastern Ukraine probably not coming back either. But that has always been the ultimate outcome of this war. I have believed from the beginning. 3 years on now, we lose 2,500 people a week in that war, 10,000 a month. Who knows how many are injured, but that's how many fatalities we have, according to numbers that trickle out. Look, a lot of the eastern end of Ukraine considers itself to be Russian in the first place. So this is a foregone conclusion for many people, for many observers. I'm one of those folks. Maybe that makes me a bad guy, but look, Ukraine is not going to be returned to where it was. Russia is not going to run over Ukraine and win the whole country. Everybody loses here, Rick. I don't really see any winners here particularly, unless Russia considers it a win to lose all of these lives to gain a little bit of territory in Ukraine, which I think is a terrible loss for that country.
Well, that's exactly it. This is war. Right. And hardly in war do you get to annihilate, get everything you want, and your enemy, gives it all up without a fight. That's just not going to happen. We have to be realistic about this. Resources are limited in any scale that you do. So Russia has to recognize that they have to settle with what they've got now. The U.S. still has some options to make things a little bit more difficult for Vladimir Putin and Russia so that he can recognize the importance of coming to the peace table. But also Zelensky has to be serious about these things, too. So as of today, and that could change tomorrow, the ball right now, I think, is in Putin's court. He needs to take that next step towards the peace table, and then hopefully we'll have some honest conversations about what to do next. But you're absolutely right. If maybe 11 years ago, if the EU or back then Obama had protested or done something a little bit more aggressive or assertive regarding the Russian occupation of Crimea, perhaps that would have reshaped Putin's mindset when it came to invading Ukraine under the Biden administration, where he suspected that he would get the same kind of similar outcome that he got with Crimea. And remember, it was the Biden administration that had given Zelensky about 48 hours before the whole Ukrainian government would collapse and offered him a flight out and just abandon everything and leave everything behind. So that was the position of the Biden administration, 3 years ago.
Well, it seems to be the Biden position oftentimes, cut and run. We saw that in Afghanistan as well. That was the demonstrated policy of the Biden administration, sadly. Look, I give the Ukrainian people plenty of praise. And look, they held on in a war that I don't think any of us really thought that Russia would be stymied the way they have been. But Russia has proven to be not nearly as powerful as we expected, obviously. But I don't think there's any good guys here particularly, not in the government portion of it. I have no issue with the Russian people or the Ukrainian people. But look, Zelensky, he's lining his pockets. Putin, he's a beast. And so, I'm not rooting for either side here. I wish it would end for the sake of the people there. Right. But I don't think there really are any good guys here, Rick.
No, absolutely. No, look, it is improper to frame Ukraine as this, small, innocent, non-corrupt, perfect democracy in Eastern Europe.
It's one of the most corrupt countries on earth. Ukraine is a money laundering machine.
Right? Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So, look, I think that's a narrative that some in maybe Hollywood and definitely those on the far left here in Washington love to promote. The reality is, it doesn't matter how many U.S. dollars you send to Ukraine. That's not going to change or shift the narrative there unless you're willing to provide more people, more technologies, and greater death tolls. So I don't believe that's what we should be doing. I think Donald Trump is called this correctly as, hey, let's cut our losses now. Let's try to get things back to some resemblance of normalcy, and just stop the fighting. Stop the war. It's something that is only going to be advanced and negotiated when Ukraine and Russia, and those are the only two people who could have that conversation, decide to get together in a room. We can help facilitate that. We can help them to have that discussion, and we can apply pressure points at the right times in the right places to get them to come together closer and closer. But ultimately, they got to want peace.
Yeah, they've got to want to go to the dance. They've got to want to go to the dance, Rick. There's no two ways about that. And honestly, for a lot of us, we sit there and say, well, it doesn't look like Zelensky wants peace. Putin doesn't seem to want peace very much either. And so this just grinds and grinds and grinds on. And look, it is a slow grind here. You're not having massive amounts of people killed any single day, at least not so far. But it's a grind. 100 here, 200 there, another 100 over there. It's just awful. And until we get to that point where they can both want to say, look, we both want this to end, it's going to continue. Now, Steve Witkoff, he's proven himself to be quite adept at these conversations, at these negotiations. Donald Trump has complete faith in him. Do you think that Steve Witkoff is the man to get it done?
I hope so. I hope so. Look, I think anyone who thinks that Steve Witkoff is going to be able to change President Trump's opinion on something, and nothing against Steve Witkoff, I just don't think many people in his cabinet have that ability to have him do a 180 on just about any policy. That's just not going to happen. So I think Witkoff is the best messenger and envoy for this administration to make sure that what Trump has laid out, what he wants to see get done, and to represent the U.S. position that we've had enough. We're not going to keep funding with a blank check this war, and we're also not going to turn a blind eye to human rights violations, and we're going to hold Europe responsible for protecting its own backyard. Those are the messages that I think Witkoff is properly briefed up on and is delivering.
Well, bring something else to mind, Rick, that I just saw a headline pass here a short while ago. The UK here a couple of weeks ago will send soldiers to the front line. Well, apparently they've changed their mind on that. It's just too dangerous to send soldiers to the front line. So, again, the EU, whether it's the UK, France, Germany, it's a lot of bluster and not much else. It's a lot of bluster, not much else. They still turn to America. Hey, we need this equipment. Hey, can we have these missiles, these tanks, these fighter jets? Here's all the equipment, right? While they tongue lash Donald Trump and the Americans, they take all the free handouts, they take all the cash, they take none of the blame. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, the EU is to blame as much for this as anyone else. And you say,
well, look, I got one better for you. They spent more money buying Russian oil and gas than they did actually giving to the Ukraine last year. So where are their priorities? If this is such
who warned them about that?
Yeah, well, exactly.
And who warned them about
if this is
that?
such an existential threat to Europe, well, then they need to act like it's an existential threat to Europe. We're blessed with an Atlantic Ocean and a Pacific Ocean, and of course, no one's calling for an increase in war or Russian troops rolling into different European countries. No one's calling for that at all.
Here's the thing that I've said from the beginning, Rick.
Europe has capital, Europe has revenue, Europe has weapon systems, Europe has money, and they need to.
Europe doesn't have a spine. That's the problem. Europe doesn't have a spine. Yeah. They don't. And this has been predictable for the entire time. Yeah. The German delegation sitting there and laughing at Donald Trump when he said, "Do not, take all that oil from Russia because you're funding the war," and he was mocked for that. It's absolutely ridiculous. Yep. So this is the question I asked those that were the people that had their Ukraine flag on their Twitter account and the Ukraine flag on their Facebook. How does it end? None of those people ever had an answer. How does it end? Like Ukraine's going to go defeat Russia? Come on. Anyhow, real quick last word.
It ends with, in their minds, they think it's a storybook ending, that good will prevail over evil. But it's not you can't look at this from a good and evil kind of optic, right? As you said, these are warring countries with their own problems, with their own issues, with their own demands over resources, over ports, over access. And these are two warring nations. One is much larger and much better equipped than the other. And the best outcome is to sue for peace.
Yeah, the only outcome is for peace now, because obviously Russia did not meet expectations when this war began. I thought it'd be over in a few days. It was not. It's 3+ years later, and here we are. Yeah. Rick, thank you for the conversation. We'll keep an eye on it. I hope that Steve Witkoff and the Trump administration can facilitate peace. But if they can't, I understand them saying, we're done here. Right. Thank you for being here.
Right.
All right. After the break, I recently had the chance to sit down with the director of the White House Faith Office, Jenny Korn. Brand new office, by the way, in the White House. I'll show you what she had to say about faith in America straight ahead. been remarkable to watch President Trump deliver on his promises, pretty much all of them. One promise in particular comes to mind, establishing a faith office at the White House. Earlier this week, I had the chance to speak with a number of the Trump administration officials, including the director of faith at the White House, Jenny Korn. Take a look at what she had to say about faith in America today. Here she is.
Jenny, nice to meet you.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you for having me on.
Right. Obviously, a very big headline, Donald Trump and the First Lady going to Rome. This is obviously, when you talk about faith in the world, and you have background, Roman Catholic, you just told me, it's an important changing of the guard, if you will.
It is. And, you know, the president has put out there that he commemorates the Pope's life and that he worked hard. He was a man of deep humility. He did so much work, and he was so loved by the Catholic people, and even those who weren't Catholic, just for all of his work. So I think it's really important that the president and First Lady go and pay their respects, and I think it'll be a wonderful celebration of life. A
bit of contradictions, this Pope. The first Pope from the Americas, obviously broke through in that way, but also a man that was criticized by both left and right. But in the end, staunch pro-life, never wavered on that, and I think that that's one thing where at least those more conservative folks can say, well, at least we identify with that.
Right, and I would say that, yes, there was some controversy.
Sure.
I'm not going to shy away from that. Contradictions. But here's the thing you could say about him. He was a man of humility. He was humble, and he truly loved the world and loved people. And so that you can, I think we can all agree about that.
Jenny, any idea? You know, obviously there are a dozen names out there. The papal conclave gets underway. A maximum of 120 people, none to be over the age of 80. I've done my homework.
Yes.
It's a historical event.
Right.
Even people that aren't particularly interested in Catholicism, I find it interesting as far as the historical value. Because the Pope always has huge influence, right?
It's an amazing tradition that goes back centuries, and it's just we'll all be watching. We're not going to play favorites here.
No, we have no idea.
But we're just going to be watching to see. There's a few that have risen to the top, but you never know. I think it's always a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I think it is as well. Now, here domestically, Pam Bondi came out this week, said, look, anti-Christian bias is going to end. We've seen it in schools. We've seen anti-Semitic behavior on college campuses. We've seen all these attacks on faith. But she came out specifically with these anti-Christian initiatives to stop this and eradicate anti-Christian bias in this country. What do you see? Obviously, you're a student of faith in America, of all faiths. How does this play out for you?
Right. Well, you mentioned the title, right? So I just wanted to let your viewers know that the White House Faith Office is a newly created historic office, never been in the West Wing, as a direct report to the president. And so we have our own office led by senior advisor, Pastor Paula White, who's President Trump's pastor.
Certainly.
And so I was at the meeting yesterday with AG Bondi, with about 15 cabinet secretaries. That just shows you the importance, and sadly, that there is anti-Christian bias in the government. And so you had Secretary Rubio, Secretary Hegseth, you just had Robert Kennedy, who were all reporting on all the anti-Christian bias they have found thus far.
Already.
So Rubio went and asked for, tell us what anti-Christian bias you find. In just 7 days, they found 150 plus instances. And then we, as the White House Faith Office, brought witnesses who could tell their testimony on the bias that they've felt by the federal government, of all things.
It's clear from many of us watching that there has been a change in faith. Now, Joe Biden was a Catholic, but a lot of his ideas and comments didn't seem to line up particularly well on occasion. But we saw a return to Easter this year. We saw Franklin Graham giving a prayer. We saw Donald Trump giving testament to the risen Christ. It's a totally different attitude, it seems to me, when it comes to Easter and faith in this country.
Well, we saw what abomination it was last year when President Biden decided to put a proclamation out on Easter Sunday about the Trans Visibility Day. Such a poke in the eye to Christians all over the world. So this year, the White House Faith Office with President Trump said, we're going to make it big. We're going to honor Easter with the observance it deserves. So he put out a proclamation on Sunday, Palm Sunday, to say this is proclaiming it as Holy Week and what it means. Then he did a video, a presidential video. Then we had an amazing, beautiful sit-down dinner with pastors, priests, and faith leaders in his his residence, and we invited the country to worship
To
and
join.
pray.
Yeah.
So we did it live streamed, and we did worship and prayer before he spoke, and then he spoke. And then the next day, we held a White House staff worship service that we didn't know how many people were actually going to show up.
Right.
It was standing room only,
That's
and
beautiful.
staff out the doors, worshiping and praying. And Franklin Graham, Pastor Greg Laurie, Pastor Jensen Franklin, Pastor Paula White were all part of that. So it was a beautiful week.
Jenny, let me ask you this, a little tougher question.
Okay.
I won't keep you much longer, but I do have this question, because during COVID, there was an exodus out of churches and houses of worship all across this country. And a lot of those people have not migrated back into the pews. How do we as a country return to more faith like we've seen in the White House
Yes.
for Easter this year? I mean, it was a celebration.
Right.
It really was. How do we return more people back to these houses of worship?
Right. Well, people were leaving during COVID because the government shut down those churches. And I will tell you, President Trump was
Outrageous.
one of the first people to say, wait a second, we've got to open these churches back up. And it was the governors who tried to keep those churches shut down and even arrest people for being in their car listening to church outside of the church. I mean, insane, because we just know that there are people who, if they want to shut down the church, that they will. And so I think you set an example, and we're setting an example here with President Trump and the White House Faith Office, that it's okay to wear faith on your sleeve. It's okay to express yourself in your faith, and that people of faith have a voice in your government. There's a welcome mat for people of faith here at the White House, and I think you're going to see, we're already seeing the turnaround. We're seeing a revival everywhere. Bible sales are up. We see church attendance actually going up, especially in youth and with men. So I feel very inspired that people are going to start going back to church in bigger numbers.
You've got enthusiasm there. And men, as I've said on this program over and over again, we need more real fathers, more real men to stand up and take charge of your faith and your family. What's your prayer for America?
Oh, wow. That's a big... I pray I pray for President Trump and his safety and his family, but I also pray that America can just experience God and their faith in a way that brings them the joy that it brings me. I want people to feel the joy that I feel every day when I pray, and that there's something bigger than us. America is such an amazing country, and I want people to know and appreciate this amazing country. So I pray for love, for comfort, for peace in our country, and for us to come together.
She was a joy, an absolute joy to be around. Did enjoy that time that we spent together there. All right, coming up after the break, it seems that justice is indeed getting served. That's because some of these rogue activist judges hiding illegals are being arrested now. Details coming up. It seems that the rogue activist judges in America are getting a much-needed wake-up call this week. That's because earlier today, Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan was arrested, charged with 2 felonies for her role in aiding an undocumented immigrant, that's an illegal alien, to avoid arrest after appearing in her courtroom of all places. Yeah, it happened. Not only that, but a former county magistrate judge in New Mexico, Judge Joel Cano, and his wife arrested, taken into custody on Thursday for tampering with evidence as they harbored an illegal alien. Yes, it's all true. Here with me to discuss this is the chief White House correspondent for Real America's Voice, Brian Glenn. Now, look, Brian, if you go on social media, you see people clamoring, saying, when are these people going to, and they're referring to these judges that are interfering with Donald Trump's agenda, but these 2 judges both have something similar. They were interfering with ICE and others trying to deport illegals in this country. The case in New Mexico involved a member of Tren de Aragua. I mean, I'm sorry, you're a judge. You have a gang member that's in the country illegally living in your house? I'm sorry, has the world gone mad?
Well, if you remember, Steve, we did tell the world, if you love them so much, why don't you take them in? We even bust them to people's neighborhoods. But I guess the Democrats literally took that seriously and said, okay, if you're from an MS-13 gang or any other gang, come on in. We're gonna be your personal Airbnb and just come live with us. We'll hide you from the wall. It's unbelievable how any one of these individuals would want an active gang member that who knows what their true rap sheet says. Who knows how many people they've actually murdered? But come on in, open the door. Your bedroom's on the left, first door on the left. That's where you're living. Crazy,
unbelievable. And this look, for me at least, I'm saying, well, at least I mean you've got Kash Patel and Pam Bondi stepping up and saying, look, if you do something this foolish, we're coming in right now. They raided the house in New Mexico. They arrested the judge in Milwaukee. Look, it's refreshing to see that finally, if you commit a crime and you wear a black robe, that's no way to get away with it. We're going to hold people accountable. I hope this is the beginning of more action, because it takes action like this, Brian, to say, here's the standard. Here's the standard we're going to hold you to. If you won't uphold your oath to your office, we'll hold you to this standard right here, and you will go to jail. That's an important message to send out.
It is, and of course, the Judge Dugan in Wisconsin, their attorney was screaming that this is atrocity. This is not, we don't live where there's a king ruling over a country. This is democracy. They are defending all of this. I mean, here it is. The situation in Wisconsin was that a judge basically told the attorney and the illegal alien to, hey, you slip out the door on the left and avoid the people coming in in the lobby to get you. Like, this is absurd, and they're defending that type of behavior. But it makes me think, Steve, if these judges are doing it, how many other people, including, I don't know, the people in Congress, Democrat members of Congress in the Senate, how many people are they harboring in their home or helping find a place to hide out? This is what they do. It's unimaginable that in this country right now we have members of elected party harboring terrorists in their homes and helping them to evade arrest. You can't make it up. You cannot make it up.
Hey. You can't make it up. And I was just watching here, one of the senators, I missed it, one of the Democrat senators, outraged because these judges had been arrested.
Outraged.
And it shows that same thing. Yeah. Trump is a king. No, Trump is not doing this. You've heard this term our entire lives. We are a nation of laws, not of men. And if you can't follow the law, you will pay the price. It's supposed to be equally distributed. I'm not sure that's true. I think there's a lot of double justice and, two-tiered justice system in this country. I think most people could agree to that. But it is refreshing for a lot of us to sit here and say, you know what, finally, some people are being held accountable, Brian. And I think a lot of people feel pretty good about that. I'll give you the last word.
No, I agree. And Pam Bondi you can thank Pam Bondi, you can thank Kash Patel for doing this. My sources say, get ready, hang on tight, buckle up, because Pam Bondi is working on some big stuff to bring justice to individuals that have broken the law and misled this country. So she's doing a fine job. I just want everyone to be patient on this stuff. So you got to be patient. I mean, we live in a world we want instant. Yeah, well, absolutely. We want, it's funny. We tend to want justice served immediately, but these things take time to build the case, get it going, and then eventually we will be singing hallelujah that some of these people and these organizations are held accountable.
Well, Brian, justice might be a dish best served cold. We'll keep an eye on it. Thank you for the update as always. Thank you, my friend.
We'll see you next
week. All right. Tariffs have thrown the global economy into chaos. Potential widespread inflation tied to massive supply chain disruptions is weighing heavily on all of us. But there is a silver lining that most people may have missed. President Trump specifically exempted gold and silver from these sweeping tariffs. While these new policies are triggering significant chaos, the administration preserved your ability to diversify into precious metals. Good news, right? If you are concerned about your savings, I encourage you to have a free consultation with my friends over at Birch Gold. They have a specialist standing by right now. The first step is to text America to 989898. Receive your free, no-obligation information kit on gold. Learn how to hold gold and silver in a tax-sheltered account. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a gold IRA for no money out of your pocket. None. I buy my gold from Birch. Is it finally time you did the same? Well, with an A+ rating at the Better Business Bureau and thousands of thankful and satisfied customers, maybe you should join them. Text America to 989898. Again, text America to 989898. Claim your free information kit right now. Up after the break, President Trump recently suggested that Harvard should no longer be exempt from taxes if they keep pushing anti-Semitic and terrorist activities. Well, we'll tell you about that after the break. On Tuesday of this week, President Trump took to social media and suggested that the IRS take away Harvard's tax-exempt status. To post further details that Harvard should act in a way to favor the public interest and not push or allow any political ideology that goes against the United States within its classrooms. Now, this push to go after the university's tax-exempt status comes after the Department of Education froze $2.2 billion in multi-year grants after Harvard failed to enact merit-based hiring procedures ahead of DEI practices. The reason for the freeze further details that Harvard has been complicit in allowing protests that support anti-Semitic and terrorist activities. Harvard's president, Alan Garber, released a statement in which he said that the university's legal counsel has informed the Trump administration that they will be declining the proposed agreement. Join me now to discuss this, TPUSA contributor Morgan McMichael. Morgan, nice to see you on a Friday. Look, it's not just Harvard. I saw protests again yesterday. I was surprised to see this. City University of New York, CUNY, and a big protest there. And they're going to say this is a place where Jewish students cannot be. Jewish students can't be on this part of the campus, CUNY. How in the world is this going on still?
You know, it's crazy because we continuously see these protests happening on college campuses, whether they're anti-Semitic, whether they're anti-conservative. You know, we see Antifa running around in Washington and Seattle, and I don't think it's going to stop. But what I think is really sad about Harvard is the proposed agreement from the Department of Education read, by August of 2025, you have to discontinue DEI hiring practices. Hey, Harvard, just stop hiring people discriminatorily based off of race, gender, sex, ethnicity, and also don't admit students off of those same basis, and they declined that. So instead of actually moving, I think, in a progressive way in our country, moving towards a merit-based society, they decide to actually instead continue their discriminatory practices and go directly against the Trump administration.
Sure. So as you look now at Harvard and their practices, and we see a lot of this, and we've seen activist judges weigh in on the side of these activist universities and other things. I don't think that this is well received by the American public. I don't think it's well received by a lot of college kids anymore. It's like, what are you doing, and why are you allowing this to happen? To me, there has to be an end game here. I don't know what it is. I don't know what Harvard's long-term play is here, but I also know that there's freedom of speech issues here. Can Harvard do this? Are they being muted on their First Amendment rights as an institution? These are things that are all going to be argued out in court, I am quite sure. What do you think?
Well, I think President Trump brings up a great point that it's of the public's interest, and the American people are not in favor of the DEI policies. They're not in favor of the protests going on campus. They're doing a disservice, honestly, to the American Gen Zers out there that want to go to college and instead are falling behind because they're not able to get into the universities that they applied for because of the affirmative action DEI policies. So unless Harvard and these universities actually decide to do some changing, then I think President Trump honestly has a great suggestion to the IRS to look into maybe removing their tax-exempt status, and maybe the universities will actually listen for once and be like, maybe we should start putting American people first instead of, you know, there's a lot of immigrants that come to America that are applying for universities and getting student visas, and I think that's also a big problem when it comes to DEI hiring practices, where unfortunately a lot of students in America, in-state students in those states applying for colleges, are being put at a disadvantage.
Yeah, absolutely true. I don't know. I thought this was wrapped up after last year, but then it rears its ugly head again and again and again. Morgan McMichael, I hope you're right about this winding down at some point. Thank you for being here, as always.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it. All right, after the break, China and U.S. relations appear to be healing some movement. But we've got a long way to go. We'll talk with an expert after the break.
Hey.
recent Time magazine interview, President Donald Trump stated that his administration is in talks with China to secure a new tariff deal and claimed that Chinese President Xi Jinping has personally called him. Trump emphasized progress in the negotiations, suggesting a deal could be on the horizon. Would be nice. However, Chinese officials continue to push back, denying that such communications or formal trade talks have taken place at all. Here with me to discuss U.S.-Chinese relations is an American attorney, political commentator, and the author of the book Plan Red, Gordon G. Chang. He is my go-to, and we need to discuss China. Gordon, nice to see you on a Friday. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Steve.
I saw a figure that 77% of the exports from China go to the United States. That being stymied, that being stifled at all is going to greatly, it's injurious to the Chinese economy. It's not sustainable from my point of view. What can you say? I mean, how long can they carry on if they don't have 77% of their exports going to America?
Yeah, I don't think the number is that high, but clearly the U.S. is the #1 export destination for China. And the answer to your question is, I don't think that they can continue for too much longer. At least what would happen would be the Chinese economy would fail. It already is probably contracting, and we can see this from a number of indicators. It looks like to be in a deflationary spiral. The problem for Xi Jinping is that it gets worse in the sense that exports are really the only hope he has for getting out of this, because he's turned his back on consumption as a fundamental basis of the Chinese economy. And you have a period in history where the world is deglobalizing. They really need the United States. And if they don't have it, I think their economy could fail, because we're seeing factories close already, workers returning to farms. This is not something that China can do this for maybe a couple weeks, but I think that ultimately they need to do something fast.
Fair enough. Now, people that I know that travel back and forth to China on a regular basis have been telling me for the last couple of years that factories were not working at capacity. The factories had slowed down even a couple of years ago. China claims that their GDP has gone up about 5%. You just totally blew that out of the water, Gordon. You don't believe that's true at all, do you?
No, they reported 5.4% growth in the first quarter of this year. But at the same time, official reports show that tax receipts declined 3.5%. That's very hard to reconcile. But the most important thing is what I mentioned, which is price data. We saw in February and March, China's in a deflationary spiral. And it's very hard to report robust growth when your economy is things are getting cheaper and cheaper. That just defies economic logic. Now, China has somewhat of an unusual situation because of its high currency walls, but it's not that unusual. And so I think the Chinese are hiding some real serious problems right now.
So how does President Xi overcome this? We know over the last many years he eliminated many of his political rivals, but it is the Chinese Communist Party. He changed the rules. He eliminated some competition. But if he continues to fail, if the economy fails, as you suggest, if tax receipts are down 3.5%, if people are going back to farms, there becomes real political pressure on President Xi. And in China, that means your own personal safety becomes jeopardized, correct?
Yes, and it's worse for Xi Jinping because when he became General Party Secretary in 2012, in other words, China's ruler, he inherited a consensual political system where no senior leader got too much credit or too much blame because decisions were shared across the top of the Communist Party. But by grabbing power from everybody else, Steve, he ended up with near total or even total accountability. And because things are going very poorly for China right now, I think that he's in a vulnerable position. Now, he probably will be able to slide through this, but it's going to be pretty dodgy for him, especially because we already see signs of severe infighting among civilians, but more important, at the top of the Chinese military, where Xi Jinping's loyalists seem to be getting the axe. And that can't be good news for China's paramount leader.
No, That cannot be good news for him. All right, so where does the pressure come from? Does it come from the military? Is there anybody left in the political circles of the Chinese Communist Party that could challenge him or rise up or try to take power from him, or is it only the military?
Well, that's a great question. There are civilian leaders who probably could challenge him. I suspect they're going to try and lay low, but we really don't know. Because Xi Jinping has made this political system, and indeed the country as a whole, less transparent. So there's less that we know about China today than we did 3-4 years ago. And that means we're guessing more than we would like to. But the point here is that we are seeing signs which are incompatible with stability. And especially as the economy continues to erode, the party can hold on for some time, but we also know that the Chinese people in general have been volatile, and every once in a while they erupt. And when they erupt, Communist Party control mechanisms just fail. That happened in October 2022, where there were protests spread across the country. Everyone was taken by surprise. And then, fortunately for the party, they died down. But that could happen again, especially because we see severe discontent and disillusionment in Chinese society, even before the tariff war.
Yeah, hungry people are angry people, Gordon. That doesn't matter where you come from. That's the way that is. If you could give Donald Trump, the president, some advice about the next move for the next 7 days or 14 days, what would that be?
I would say the most important thing is to stitch up a trade agreement with Japan or South Korea or Vietnam or Italy or somebody, because you got to appease the markets. Xi Jinping's only hope for this is to sort of rally Wall Street or Main Street to put pressure on Trump to preemptively surrender, even though Trump holds the objective high cards. But so Trump, I think, needs a trade deal with some country in order to sort of make sure the markets are happy. And then once he gets the first deal, he'll get a lot of others because everybody else will fall into line. But he needs that first deal, and he needs to show more discipline in his dealings with other countries as he negotiates these trade deals.
Fair enough. Gordon, always greatly appreciate you being here. The book is Plan Red. You can follow Gordon on X at Gordon G. Chang. And if you want to keep up and have the best information on what's happening in China and that ever-changing landscape, at Gordon G. Chang on X. Gordon, thank you for being here on a Friday.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate it. On any day of the week.
I appreciate you. Thank you, sir. He's been a friend for a long time. Smart man and a great resource. Think about it. Every dollar you spend is either supporting your values or working against them. In today's economy, where you spend your money matters, and that's how we take back our country. Money, baby. Patriot Mobile is leading the way as America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. Switch today without sacrificing quality or service. I did it years ago now. You'll get exceptional nationwide coverage because unlike most budget wireless providers, Patriot Mobile has a deal with all 3 major U.S. networks. You can even add 2 numbers on 2 networks on one phone. Imagine that, something the big guys can't even do. Stay connected with flexible unlimited data plans to fit your lifestyle. These plans offer high-speed data, mobile hotspots, international roaming, device protection, and even internet backup. Here's the best part. When you switch to Patriot Mobile, you're supporting faith, family, and freedom. If you believe in our First and Second Amendments, the sanctity of life, supporting our veterans, this is where you belong. Switching is simple, and keeping your number and keeping your phone is easy. You can upgrade too if you'd like. Patriot Mobile has a 100% U.S.-based customer service team to get you going. Right now, go to patriotmobile.com/RAV or call 972-PATRIOT to get a free month of service with the promo code RAV. Make the switch. Defend freedom with every call and text. That's patriotmobile.com/RAV or call 972-PATRIOT. We'll take a break and be right back on America's Voice Live. Voice question of the day to wrap things out on this Friday. Do you think Russia and Ukraine will reach a peace deal before President Trump's deadline? Why or why not? Brian Sharkey writes this: I think Trump will get the deal done, maybe not by the deadline. I think Zelensky is a greedy putz, and a soullessness that Putin is an altar boy, but I think Zelensky will be the biggest problem. Bombo dip. Zelensky knows he is dead one day if he stops. He is the ultimate grifter. And Putin, F you too. You see, nobody likes either one of these guys. That's where I am, right? Ron Russo. No, because Zelensky does not want it to end. He just wants more money and resources. Biden's BS set this all up. There's truth there. I think if they are both part of the new world order, that they are fighting against the USA and President Trump making us a great and independent nation again, so we won't see peace. But I'm hoping for a respite. Me too. Marcy Wilson Drury. All that is necessary is for the USA to cut off trade to Russians. We already did that. Things would change immediately. Then tell the European crybabies to cut off Russia. Endgame. They already did that. Russia, the amount of sanctions Russia already faces are almost insurmountable, which is why Trump left him off the tariff list. He let Putin and Russia off the tariff list because it wouldn't make any difference. Trish Hicks, one is a dictator, one is a con man and a mini dictator who, like a Democrat, just wants money thrown his way. Well, there you have it. I appreciate you being here all this week. It has been a busy week. Donald Trump on his way to Rome, by the way, where he will attend the funeral of Pope Francis. The pontiff died Monday of this week, 88 years of age. The President and First Lady will be there to attend the ceremonies. There you have it. I'll see you Monday morning at 6 a.m. to kick off Real America's Voice Live broadcasting, then back for America's Voice Live. Have a wonderful weekend.
Tried to shut them up.
There's no guarantee to free speech.
They tried to cancel them.
Deplatforming works.
They even threw them in jail.
Peter Navarro,
Steve Bannon,
now in prison.
But they couldn't stop them.
There's not a prison built that will ever shut me up.
They call them rebels.
Basket of deplorables.
They call them rogues.
They claim to guns or religion.
And they say they're outlaws.
These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass.
War Room presents Rebels, Rogues, and Outlaws.
You set out to take Vienna. Take Vienna!
The national bestseller by longtime Bannon producer Dan Fluette. Take a journey through the pictorial history of War Room. In a culture that celebrates the weak, show your support by standing with the rebels. Go to doitfluette.com or scan the QR code on your screen. Use the code RAV20 for 20% off your order. Stand with the rebels and never back down.
All right, there it is, folks. It's Friday, and look at that. We have the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange again, 4 o'clock, right on the dot, right when we come up. Got to tell you what's going on, because decent day, really decent week for the market after a very rocky start. NASDAQ up 216 points. Dow Jones flat, just 19, almost 20 points. NASDAQ 216, like I said. S&P up 40. Again, the VIX, which is a indication of how nervous people are in the markets, down. You want it lower. Lower the VIX, the better, and that's going down. Also, of note, Tesla stock up $25 a share. Elon Musk's Tesla, when he said he was going to get back to getting his fingers back into Tesla and SpaceX and Neuralink, that's good for those companies, and investors are happy. But it's also good that Elon Musk is trying to do right by the country, trying to help us save money with Doge, and he has been getting slammed. I think his net worth dropped over $120 billion. $120 billion alone, his own net worth, since he started this. He's sacrificing for the country. Tesla stock up nicely today. Bitcoin's up over 95,000. That's great. Bitcoin is moving back up, folks. All right, let's bring in my first guest. Says Congress is not doing its job to deliver the people's mandate. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene joins us to talk about why the Republican-controlled House isn't passing President Trump's executive orders every week. Welcome, Congresswoman. Tell us what's going on. By the way, we love having you. You look terrific there. Look just awesome to bring you into the 4 o'clock hour. And we appreciate you. My audience appreciates you here. What's going on in Congress?
Thanks for having me.
You having a hard time getting some of the stuff through, Congresswoman, and why and who? Let's start with who.
You know, I posted about this morning, Eric, and I think it's extremely important to talk about is President Trump and his administration is having a historic first 100 days. They are doing more for this country, the American people and American companies than any administration in both of our lifetimes. However, it's Congress that is behind and not really passing the mandate that the American people delivered in November. And Eric, if we look back in Joe Biden's first 100 days, then Speaker Nancy Pelosi had worked with Chuck Schumer in the Senate, and they sent 11 bills to Joe Biden's desk, including the American so-called rescue plan that was $1.9 trillion of spending of DEI, trans policies, ridiculous COVID waste and fraud, and so much more, open border policy spending that caused the invasion into our country. They did that in the first 100 days. We're behind, Eric. We've only sent 5 bills to President Trump's desk. That's the Laken-Riley Act, 3 disapproval resolutions of Joe Biden's energy policies, and 1 CR that I never wanted to vote for. It was Biden policies, Biden spending, and unfortunately we had to vote for that to keep the government open. And I'm frustrated. I'm going to tell you, Eric, I'm so frustrated because I ran for Congress angry at the Republican Congress that didn't do the job in President Trump's first administration. And I think a lot of people at home are really upset with Congress as well. Are
you happy with Speaker Johnson? The reason why I ask this is I know Trump likes him. I see Speaker Johnson when Trump goes to a UFC fight or goes to a football game or wherever he is. He's usually, or a lot of times he's in the entourage. So I think Trump gets along with him. It's just there are a lot of people out here who aren't inside in the halls of Congress like you are, or in the White House like Trump is, who are saying, we're not sure this agenda is being pushed or properly delivered. What are your thoughts on the Speaker?
Well, it's not necessarily the Speaker, and I've been very critical of Speaker Johnson in the past, so I'm not necessarily pointing fingers at Speaker Johnson at this time, and President Trump fully supports Speaker Johnson, and he's made that clear. They have a great relationship. Our problems in Congress are not only just the House itself, but it goes to the Senate, and we're just not moving fast enough, Eric. And the problems in the House actually come from inner quarreling about what should be in the reconciliation package, about tax policy. I'll give you a really good example, and this is important for people to understand. There's actually conservatives that are fighting against the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security campaign promises that President Trump delivered on the road and the American people fully supported. Well, we're having trouble convincing them that these are things that should be in our reconciliation packages. But I will say that leadership does deserve criticism. We should be passing rescissions every single week. The Senate can pass those as well because that only requires 51 votes. The House should be passing executive orders every single week and sending those to the Senate. And the reconciliation package, we should have already had that done. We should have been able to do it just like the Democrats did, because that only needs 51 votes as well.
The things that you're talking about right there, and my concern is that, so it's the Republicans who are pushing back on some of these tax issues. Are these the ones who want everything paid for? Is that the people you're talking about?
It's a mix. See, there's Republicans pushing back on these tax promises that I think are incredibly important. These are the promises we made to the people. They help senior citizens, they help workers, and they help those that work in the service industry. These are campaign promises that the people deserve and will help us win in the midterms in 2026. But then we have other parts of our conference that don't want to cut any revenue, and they want to fund many of the programs. So you've got conservatives saying, no, don't cut this revenue into the federal government because they want to cut spending. And then we have other parts of our conference saying, no, we don't want to cut as much spending. So there's all this inner fighting that shouldn't be happening. Here's what the Republican Party needs to understand, Eric. The American people didn't vote for Republican Party policies. Right. The American people voted for Trump, America First, MAGA policies. And that was a referendum on the Republican Party that Republicans in Washington need to get the message. The American people are sick of them. They want President Trump's agenda, and that's what Congress should be passing. And I'm really losing my patience. I've been quiet on this. I have waited, just watching and saying, okay, we should get this done. I've been hopeful, but here we're coming up on President Trump's historic 100 days, where the administration is doing an amazing job, and Congress once again is way behind and should be doing better.
So a couple of things there, and maybe you can help me unpack this. Number one, I think no tax on tips is super, super important. Right? Does it have to be part of this package? Can't you guys break that out? I'm sure that would pass flying colors across, and Trump would sign it immediately. Is this something you couldn't do, standalone? Because it's important. The American people love that idea. And then if you don't mind, and then going forward, is there any... Rand Paul on the Senate side has said he's against a lot of these fiscal policies, some of these financial, the tariffs, et cetera. Are people in the House getting hung up because they're afraid it's going to not pass the Senate?
Okay, so your first question about no tax on tips, and we'll add overtime and Social Security, they cannot be separate. They have to be in the reconciliation bill, because that's the bill that's going to be energy, border, and our new tax law that expires this year. And the reconciliation package only needs 51 votes in the Senate, not the required 60 that's pretty much for everything else. So they have to be in that bill, and it has to be done as soon as possible to grow our economy and give businesses a way to plan for the future. That tax bill is extremely critical. And then the second part of your question is here's what we have to do. Okay. President Trump and his tariffs are the best thing going. President Trump is bringing investments into the country. We're watching them. $7 trillion of investment from businesses. He's fighting for American companies, giving them an edge, finally making things fair with trade among all the countries in the world. So that is going to grow our economy. But when we give these tax breaks for the American people, that's more money in their pocket that they will put back into the economy that will continue to grow our economy and make everything better for all Americans. And this is up to Congress, and Congress needs to do their job.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think folks don't realize out here is that these need to be made permanent. So now is your opportunity. You have the House, you have the Senate. This is the moment where you can do this and make these Trump tax cuts permanent, so that the next guy, whoever it is, if it's not J.D. Vance or whomever, or Marjorie Taylor Greene, or one of a number of people, after that couldn't come back and say, no, those are temporary. These need to be made permanent. And you guys really got to get it together. That's how important this moment is, right?
Yes, it's important. Congress is not seizing on the moment. This is a time, think about this. We have a judicial coup happening in our country, a judicial coup. where these judges are defying the will of the people and defying what the president and his administration is trying to do. And, you know, the Democrats have been waging a coup and basically a silent civil war against President Trump and Republicans in this country, really, let's be honest, since 2017. Let's go back to Crossfire Hurricane. And Republicans right now in Congress, the House and the Senate, have got to understand the moment. If we do not deliver the American people's will, the president's agenda, we could lose the midterms, and we all know what will happen then.
Again,
they will go straight into impeachment.
Is it the Freedom Caucus that's holding this mess up, or individuals in the Freedom Caucus?
Yeah, primarily they are fighting against the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security. That not all of Freedom Caucus, but the leadership and pretty much the core part, the board, they are fighting against that because they weren't MAGA. They were not for President Trump. And then you've got other wings of our conference that, you know, like Don Bacon, who's fighting against President Trump's tariffs, just like Rand Paul is. And so we have these different divisions, but here's what these Republicans need to get, Eric. The American people didn't vote for them. They didn't vote for their agenda. They did not vote for their policies. They voted for President Trump's. They voted for President Trump's America First policies. They voted for President Trump's MAGA policies, and they voted for MAHA policies. So Republicans in Congress don't get to step in and go back to some Tea Party politics or Republican policies that of old that have never worked. It's time for Republicans in Congress to put down their egos and get on board with the American people's agenda, which is President Trump's agenda.
Right. There's a bigger picture here. We're playing for a bigger prize than your own your own reelection, which they may be concerned about. And that is the American people. American people sent those folks, all you folks, a mandate that we want Trump's agenda. Listen, I'm a free market guy. I don't like tariffs, but I want him to win. I want America to win. I want this to work. I'm on board with you. Listen, I would never fight that. I would never push it because I want us to win. And Trump, I trust him. One more topic. I'm dying to hear what you have to say about David Hogg on the left. He's 25 years old, somehow become like the voice for liberal Democrats, or Democrats, so to speak. He wants to primary some of the older crowd of Democrats. How does a 25-year-old have such a strong voice in the Democrat Party? And do you think he's the new wave, AOC the mid-wave, and the Schumers, are they on their way out? What are your thoughts on the Democrats, specifically with regards to David Hogg, the vice chair of the DNC?
I love this question. Let's analyze David Hogg, and we'll add AOC and people like Jasmine Crockett. These are people that are not married. They probably don't own a home. Well, no, Jasmine Crockett, I think, owns several, which everyone questions. AOC, I don't know if she owns a home or not. No kids, right? I don't think any of them have any children. So they really don't have any true life experience, Eric. I would argue that. They've never run businesses. They've never had to sign paychecks. They've never had to be responsible for employees or really making a profit and understanding how to continue that. So here's what's really interesting about that. Every time you see these rallies and these protests, most of these Democrat voters that are out there protesting and rallying are old people. So I find it laughable that these old people, these old liberal or communist Democrats, really they're communists because they're from Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton's generation, right? It's funny that they would support a David Hogg or an AOC or a Jasmine Crockett replacing the old elected Democrats like Chuck Schumer, like Nancy Pelosi and Maxine Waters. So it's really another hypocrisy amongst the Democrat Party. And it just shows how backwards and upside down and how confused and really how insane they are.
Yeah, and you got to love to sit back. I'm loving I'm almost breaking out the popcorn watching David Hogg talk about primarying a whole slew of Democrats. This is exactly what you want. The Democrat Party is in such disarray. It's all over the board, and they don't know what they are. And David Hogg, Congresswoman David Hogg, representing them, and like you said, Jasmine Crockett, who's got a mouth on her, that young lady. If that's what they want, hey, all for it in 2026, 2028, and many years beyond.
Oh, yeah. Well, don't forget, Jasmine Crockett said the people vote for vibes, not policy. And then we all know about David Hogg. He just wants to take everyone's guns away because he thinks that little, soy boy, he'll feel a lot safer if no one has guns. But it's ridiculous. Guns are to protect ourselves. They're a great form of defense. But David Hogg wanting to primary everyone shows that the Democrat Party is completely messed up. And we know that. Actually, they do know who they're for. They are for MS-13. They're for illegal aliens that broke our immigration laws. They're for the Green New Deal that doesn't work. They're for the trans ideology, and they're for destroying women's rights and abortion. That's what the Democrat Party is for, and they're wide open and honest about it.
Well, we love having you on, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. We'll get you back again soon. Like I said, this shot here, I'm telling you, after Congress, if there's a TV future somewhere in there. Congresswoman, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
All right, folks, we'll be back in 2.5 minutes. Seagraves, Texas, and the reason why that's very interesting, it's again another beautiful shot of the Lone Star State. Beautiful blue sky, wind blowing. Awesome. We'll get to that, the reason why we're doing that in just a second. Actually, let me do this. I'm going to bring him in right now. I'm going to bring in Attorney General Ken Paxton. You know what? I want to do it because I wanted to get right to you, sir, especially after that nice little bump shot that they call.
That was nice.
Where's Seagraves, Texas? I have no idea.
You know what? That's a great question. I've been all over Texas. I'm not exactly sure where.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Let's talk about you. You're running for Senate, Texas Senate. Fantastic to replace John Cornyn. I would call him one of the last remaining rhinos, one of several remaining rhinos, but one of the last old school rhinos. What's going to be different with what you bring?
Well, first of all, he's been there too long. He's been there. It will be 24 years when he's done. He wants to go for 30. That's just too long. Very different representation. I'm not going to go along with Mitch McConnell. Like, obviously, Mitch won't be around, but establishment mentality isn't serving us well. And the people of Texas, they want a senator more like Ted Cruz, not one like John Cornyn. Believe me, the people of Texas are ready for a change. He may not recognize it, but it's real and it's going to happen.
Attorney General, you're a very, very popular man in Texas, politician in Texas. You're also a very, very popular man in MAGA world where I reside. A lot of us would like to see you in the administration. I know the Senate is you're near and dear. You want that, and it's a great gig, 6 years, and yeah, I get it. And this is a window. I got it. Any thoughts about if Trump said, "Come on, I want you in the admin"? Would you do it?
So it would depend on what it was. I mean, it would have to be something I felt I would be good at and had an interest in doing, because obviously I want to do a good job if I go there. So if he asked and it was something that I thought I would be good at and had a desire or sort of a passion to do, I think it's really important that you love what you do and that you care about it, or you're not going to do the kind of job that you need to do for the people of the country. Got it. Attorney General is the top lawmaker in the state. Talk to us about this. We can talk about Abrego Garcia, but we can also talk about these activist judges that are blocking Trump's agenda. In other words, they said, don't send people, you catch MS-13 members, don't send them back to Venezuela from, I don't know, New York. Well, they said, well, let's go to Texas and send them from Texas. Another judge says, no, you can't do it from Texas either. Supreme Court, tell us where all this legal wrangling, how do we end up with so many activist judges? Like, this is the problem that we have. We have a lot of activist judges that Obama and even Bush appointed that I deal with every day. And it's not just this issue. It's many issues. They have no respect for the Constitution, and the only check on them, since they have lifetime appointments, is Congress. Congress can impeach them. And if there's no other reason for impeaching a judge than that they will not follow the Constitution, it seems to me there should be some accountability, and Congress has that ability. Do they have to be congressionally impeached? Can they be removed, I don't know, by justice? No, just impeachment. I mean, even if they've committed crimes, they have lifetime appointments, and the founders wanted them independent. They also viewed them as the least powerful branch of government. They have become more powerful because they've stepped in, like they're trying to step into Trump's shoes and run the executive branch, make decisions for him because they disagree with him politically. That is not their role, and they need to be brushed back with a pitch, at least some type of pitch. Somebody needs to be impeached so that they get the message that this is not something you can do. Yeah, another activist judge just said they put a halt on Trump's pulling back, or at least pausing some of the funding of the schools that he said stop with the DEI programs. The schools said no. He said, I'm going to pull back funding. And the judge said, no, you have to continue funding. How can a judge have control over funding? Understand this. They don't have control. That is not their role. They have literally no control of the purse strings. That's Congress. When the money's been appropriated, and the executive branch has the opportunity to implement those policies. And if he's deciding that they're violating federal law or violating policy, then he could stop it. It's certainly a judge can't. I've been doing this a long time, Attorney General. The executive branch, the judicial branch, I mean, clearly it's a checks and balances system, but when the judicial branch overrides the executive branch, is that in the Constitution? I mean, how can the judicial branch override the executive when he's the commander-in-chief? So they have the opportunity to interpret laws and determine whether something's constitutional or not constitutional. So if President Trump is violating the Constitution, then they have the right to say so. But in this case, he's managing the government, and his job is to oversee immigration and to deal with it. Their job is not to decide whether they like his policies. Now, if they have a problem, for instance, we got a national injunction because Joe Biden decided, I'm not deporting anybody anymore. Well, guess what? That is not, he has to deport people. That is his job. And we got an injunction stopping him from deporting people. And so that's legitimate. If Trump disobeys even a Supreme Court edict, what happens? I mean, it's up for question. I guess they can hold in contempt. It would be an interesting question. I mean, if they are overstepping their bounds and he says no, I mean, I guess the left would say we have a constitutional crisis, but we already have a little bit of a constitutional crisis right now. But it's undecided as it's undecided law right now. Honestly, because Joe Biden famously went around Congress and with the student loan forgiveness, went to the Supreme Court, and I believe he still was able to get some money out after the Supreme Court said no. Yeah, he lost all the cases, and he pretty much did it anyway. So, I mean, there's certainly precedent for a president saying, I'm not following what a court says, and some of them have done it in violation of laws already in place, and some have said, no, there are no laws in place stopping me from doing this. I'm doing it.
I'm going to have a little fun interpretation of law or constitutionality. 2028 comes, J.D. Vance wins the elections, says my vice president is Donald Trump, and J.D. Vance says, I just don't have the heart for this guy, so I'm going to step aside. What happens?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer because it's never happened. And certainly Donald Trump could be vice president. There's no doubt in my mind that would be constitutional. The question is, what could he serve a third term because he stepped up because Vance, for some reason, couldn't serve or didn't want to serve? Don't know the answer. I think that would be an interesting question.
Might be worth a try. I have about a minute and a half or so. This whole idea of not deporting Abrego Garcia because the left is saying, well, he deserves due process. Due process. Number one, due process, is it constitutional? Does a non-citizen get due process? Probably, but you tell me. And then also, at some point when you violate your court order to appear or don't leave, do you still deserve due process? And by the way, isn't that due process already?
Well, I'm not sure, first of all, that if you're a non-citizen, Joe Biden let in the country. So do we have to have due process for all 14 million people? I don't know that's true. These are not people that are recognized under our Constitution as citizens. They're not supposed to be here. They should be deported immediately. We don't need any kind of hearing. If they are not supposed to be here, they should be deported. Otherwise, this will never happen. If we have to go through court proceedings for every one of these people, especially people who are committing crimes, we know this guy has a criminal history. He's a bad guy. He's a gang member. He's got a bad history. We have to be able to get rid of bad people that just walk across the border.
That's my point. I get arguments daily with liberals about due process. They have, you're in America. It doesn't matter if you're a citizen or not. You deserve due process. Well, I would contend I disagree because you're a criminal because you broke the law getting here. Do criminals deserve due process? Non-citizens? I guess we're going to find out. Ken Paxton, Attorney General from Texas, likely the next senator from the great state of Texas. Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right, folks. Before I had to break, I just want to let you know, I do a podcast and you're all aware of it. YouTube, everything. Just you have to subscribe. There's ways to subscribe. They'll be on the screen. Hit subscribe. It's free. And we will be back in 2.5 minutes. good because I never know what's coming up. Those are live views because we're always live. Casco, Maine. Really nice. Look at that, like the lake. Beautiful, beautiful setting. Probably great fishing in that lake, too. All right, folks, my next guest is up to date with the latest ways people can lose weight, and she has some thoughts on the latest pill from Ozempic. I'm happy to bring back Dr. Kelly Victory today. Dr. Victory, unbelievable what's going on with these pills. Are they safe? Are they not safe? Talk to us, and we're going to find out down the road that they're not. Help us out here.
Well, thanks for having me, Eric. Most people are familiar now with the drug Ozempic, which is the injectable form of a peptide called semaglutide. Many manufacturers, including Eli Lilly, have been working on making an oral form of that drug. However, it is posing some issues with regard to adverse side effects. We have a new drug out as well called retatrutide, which is we sell under the name Drop, which is similar to Ozempic, but it actually has 3 different mechanisms of action. Rather than targeting a singular hormone receptor like Ozempic does, the Drop formulation targets 3 different receptors. And I believe that that's likely why it is showing so much more promise in terms of weight loss. The Drop formulation is, again, like the Eli Lilly version, is oral. It's taken on a daily basis, but in a much, much lower dose than that oral pill that Eli Lilly is working on. And so therefore we have seen very, very few, if any, negative side effects. People are able not only to avoid the injections with the Drop formulation, but they take it daily and therefore can control the amount of medication that they're getting, and they can, increase it or decrease it as they see fit based on their side effects and based on their weight loss. We are seeing that this particular drug, retatrutide, as I said, called Drop from the wellness company, has really been remarkable in its ability to control people's hunger, to control their cravings. It modulates insulin production and fat metabolism, but most importantly, I think, controls appetite. And that is what really derails most people's weight loss efforts. We know that obesity is a tremendous issue in this country. 74% of adults in the United States are either overweight or obese. 40%, 4 out of 10 adolescents have pre-diabetes. These are staggering numbers, and they simply are unsustainable, in addition to the massive cost of that type of disease burden. The quality of life that people are relegated to when they are obese or overweight really is not very good. So I think that there's great promise with the retatrutide oral medication called Drop, so that people can really start to meet their weight loss goals. This is not for the casual individual who needs to lose, 5 or 8 pounds before bikini season. It's really for people who have significant weight in excess of 30 pounds, people for whom additional weight or excess weight is really putting them at risk for other health problems.
This is fascinating, and you can get this through the wellness company. There are a lot of people friends of mine who are on Ozempic, and they say, or Wegovy, or the other ones, and they'll take a shot and they won't have another shot till next week, and they say they feel sick right after the shot, and it takes them a few days to regulate whatever the drug is. But so this is a daily drop, and it's oral, number one. Number two, it's daily, so you don't have these big spikes in medication.
Exactly.
Go ahead, and that's a
no, exactly. When you take a medication once a week, particularly as an injection, you get a big spike in the blood level of the drug, and then over the ensuing 6 days, the levels drop off. If you can take this orally, like we do with Drop, you can take a much, much lower dose, and you keep a much more consistent level of the drug in the bloodstream. And therefore don't have that peak and valley. And again, if people have any negative side effect, and we have seen virtually none, they can lower the dose if they need to. But we are finding really great results thus far. I think it's an exciting thing because people can, as we said, avoid the injection. They can take it daily rather than weekly, and it has a triple mechanism of action, 3 different hormone receptors compared to semaglutide, semaglutide, which targets only a singular hormone receptor.
Fantastic. You get that through the wellness companies. Really, really, really an interesting drug and new use of a drug that's maybe been used differently for a while. Love it. Fantastic. Dr. Kelly Victory, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Eric.
Wonderful. Really good, folks. A lot of obesity is killing too many people and creating a lot of morbidities as well. All right, my next guest puts it all on the line, heads into Mexico following migrants trying to cross illegally into the U.S. He also goes on ride-alongs with ICE right here in the U.S. To tell us the latest is Rav, host of Law and Border, which airs this Saturday at 4 p.m., Ben Berkham. So, Ben, how is it with ICE these days? And are things changing since Trump has been in office?
Well, I mean, it goes without question. You look at the President Trump's policies versus the last regime's policies of open borders, let everyone in, criminals or not, no background checks, no verification, take away DNA testing of children and males, bringing the kids across so we don't know how many of those kids are being trafficked, versus President Trump, who came in and allowed Tom Homan and Kristi Noem and all of the agencies to be able to go. Now the biggest threat these guys are facing, though, is ICE agencies now being able to do their job are the enemies within our own government. And so we're going to be covering that, riding with Tom Homan and Baltimore ICE and New York ICE, and we're just getting started. So we've got a lot more this Saturday, as you said. Tomorrow is going to be the kickoff for that, our ICE special. You don't want to miss it, but there's a lot of work to be done. By the way, thank God, 2 jobs. I'm hoping for 1,000 more, but
right. Oh, what did we get? Did we lose Ben? I think we may have lost his signal. We lost Ben's signal. So we're going to say goodbye to Ben. Just a couple of thoughts. I think what was important, what I wanted to ask Ben was, we had Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton here, who told us, and we had this discussion about what is due process, and do criminals who come across the border who are already criminals and then commit crimes, do they deserve due process? He literally said it's not constitutionally written out that way. So, so someone comes across the border, is it legal for them? Do they need to have legal representation paid by us? Do they need to clog up our courts? The left will tell you yes. The left will tell you it doesn't matter how bad they are, bring them back. They'll actually go to El Salvador and sit with the illegals who came over here, have MS-13 gang stuff tattooed on their knuckles, hurt their wives to the point where the wives want them to be put in jail, and then somehow demand due process. The liberals are absolutely missing the point on this. It's incredible. And then this whole issue of whether or not Trump was allowed to deport a plane full of illegals who are criminals, criminal migrants. Judge says no, activist judge says no. So Trump says, you know what? They said no about New York. Let's see if we can send them from Texas. Another judge comes along and says, no, activist judges are going to kill this country. I'm going to say it again, activist judges are going to kill this country. Another judge yesterday just slapped a cease and desist on the Trump administration, because the Trump administration said, if you're not pulling DEI out of your schools, your little kids, if they're being exposed to the DEI BS that he didn't want and he was elected on eliminating, the federal funding was going to dry up. And another activist judge came in and said, no, you're wrong. You can't do that, Trump. So we have a lot of liberal activist judges who are changing what the American people voted for. So they're literally overriding what the American people are about, what they want, what they sent Trump as a mandate to do in D.C. Let's not forget, who are these judges? These judges are Obama and Biden appointees, many of them. Where do they come from? Where do they come from? They came from George Soros's money. George Soros has spent a lot of money to get these activist judges appointed, elected in some cases. Doesn't matter. They're liberal, they're progressive, and they're doing everything in their power to undermine the Trump administration. All right, Mad Dog, come give me a voice of God here. Give me a control room shot now too. What do we got here? What's going on? Should we go to break?
We have Ben back. It's up to you.
All right, let's just say hi to Ben real quick so we can put a button on his show, and then we'll go. Ben, you're back. We don't have any time. We ran out of time. Can you just tell us about the show and tell us what are you going to show us?
Yeah, you're exactly right. These judges need to be held accountable. This episode, we're going to be riding with Tom Homan and ICE, and you're going to see the hands tied behind their back because the previous administration and what needs to be done to unleash these guys to deport everyone that needs to be deported. And you're absolutely right. If you're here illegally, you do not deserve citizens' due process. 100%.
All right, Ben Berkham, always good to have you, my friend. Stay safe. Stay safe. You. Again, folks, don't forget to check out Ben's show, Law and Border, tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on RAV. We will be back in 2.5 minutes. Alaska. Mad Dog, you got your hat? You got your cowboy hat?
I do have my hat. I feel special.
There you go. Okay, I see it coming. You kind of look like Little Nas X. I don't know. I'm just saying. You look good, brother. I like that.
Thank you.
The cowboy hat. It was Alaska. I think a lot of horses in Alaska. I've never been there. I hear a lot of horses, so that's why.
Yeah, hee-haw.
All right, folks, tariffs have thrown the global economy into chaos. Potential widespread inflation tied to massive supply chain disruptions is weighing heavily on all of us. But there's a silver lining that most people missed. President Trump specifically exempted gold and silver bullion from the sweeping tariffs. Did you know that? I didn't know that. It's pretty interesting. While these new policies are triggering significant financial chaos, the administration preserved your ability to diversify into precious metals. If you're concerned about your savings, I encourage you to have a free consultation with a Birch Gold precious metal specialist. The first step is to text America to 989898 and receive your free no obligation info kit on gold. Learn how to hold gold and silver in a tax sheltered account. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a gold IRA for no money out of your pocket with an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of thankful customers. Text America to the number 989898. Again, text America to 989898 to claim your free info kit right now. I understand that the Democrats can barely find their way through the rest of this week, but someone in the party has to be looking ahead, right? The Dems seem to be short on depth. So when old Joe expired and Kamala failed on the national stage, eyes turned to the party's empty bench as talks of 2028 began. We've heard rumblings about Kamala Harris and Tampon Tim making individual returns. We've also seen a total shift in the messaging from Gavin Newsom's office. Outside of this, the Democrats seemingly have nobody to represent the party during the next national election. It seems like a new candidate may be slowly emerging, a candidate so impractical, someone who could really practically gift wrap an election victory and hand it right to whoever represents the GOP. It may be reaching, but listen to this very campaign ad style message from, drumroll, AOC.
You know, Idaho, I am so touched being here. I'm a girl from the Bronx. To be welcomed here in this state, all of us together, seeing our common cause, this is what this country is all about. Don't let them trick us into thinking we are enemies. Don't let them trick us into thinking we can be separated into rural and urban, black and white and Latino. We are one.
Alexandria, they told us this was a conservative state. They got it wrong.
And Idaho, I know that looking around here, it can feel impossible for Republicans out here to be defeated. That's not true. It's simply not true. And from the waitress who is now speaking to you today from this podium, I can tell you, impossible is nothing.
And from the waitress who took a $77,000 flight around the country to fight the oligarchs tour. Okay, really? This is what you want to go with? And by the way, the little girl voice has got to go. You're not going to be president with a little girl voice. Sorry. Rashida Tlaib just took the historic L loser in Congress. She proposed the measure that would see the United States designate Israel as an adversary, one of our greatest allies, certainly our greatest ally in the Middle East. Rashida Tlaib, obviously from Michigan, Muslim, wants Israel to be designated as an adversary. Listen.
Mr. Speaker, today on the House floor, there was an amendment offered that suffered the most overwhelming defeat that I have ever seen in the United States Congress. And for good reason, because it is perhaps the most abhorrent legislative proposal I have ever seen in the United States Congress. The representative from Michigan, Representative Tlaib, introduced a measure that would classify Israel as an adversary of the United States alongside the likes of China, Iran, and North Korea. Fortunately, this proposal was swiftly and nearly unanimously rejected by the House of Representatives.
The final vote, by the way, folks, was 3 to 410. 3 to 410. I'm guessing Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, the other Somalian Muslim from Minnesota, and I can't even think who the third would be. Maybe Hakeem Jeffries. No idea. Speaking of Ilhan Omar, another one of the dumbest women on the planet on the left decided to run through some of the Democrats' plans if the party was able to secure a House majority. Listen to some of the things that she wants her party to do if they get the majority.
You all know that Democrats are in the minority in the House and in the Senate, and that drastically reduces our power. If we were in the majority, here's what we would be doing. We would be holding non-stop oversight hearings about what the Trump administration is doing, carrying out investigations into the corruption and the abuses of power and illegal actions. We would be holding Trump appointees in contempt of Congress when they lie under oath and violate the Constitution. And trust me when I say this, we would be suing Trump for stealing congressional authority, especially spending power.
Oh, my goodness. Another reason why not to have her in Congress. By the way, she married her own brother for immigration reasons. This is who you want representing you, the state of Minnesota. Really? And I was right. It was Ilhan Omar was one of the other one with Tlaib and also Ayanna Presley, from Georgia. Those three voted 3 against 410 against creating a adversarial relationship with our greatest ally in the Middle East, Israel. Meghan Markle, who is named one of Time magazine's most influential people, don't know why, apparently gets her edge from flower petals. Listen to this elite talk about the salad garnish that changed her life.
Let's talk about flower sprinkles. Let's, because I think it speaks to the tiny moments of joy that are so effortless and just create a little bit of magic that we're all craving in our everyday. They're tiny little flower petals that are dried. I started putting them on salads. I started putting them on scrambled eggs. It didn't actually matter. On a yogurt parfait.
Most influential person who uses flower petals on her salad. All right, folks, stop me if you're shocked to learn that old Chucky Schumer is standing with Harvard in its attempts to sue the Trump administration. Here he is on MSNBC, of course, talking about his case.
As you know, Harvard University is suing the Trump administration for freezing billions in funding to the school after it rejected a list of the administration's demands. Is Harvard doing the right thing?
Yes, and in fact, today, a group of Jewish senators and myself sent a letter to the administration telling them that, look, going against anti-Semitism is important, but what they've done goes way beyond that.
Goodness gracious. You should be ashamed of yourself, Chuck Schumer. Ashamed of yourself. Turn in your Jewish card, will you, brother? Graduation season is upon us, and the next generation of leaders is set to leave the dorms and enter the workforce. Oh, my gosh. Brace yourself. Let's listen to what kind of skills the students at NYU, New York University, will be bringing to the table when they apply for jobs this fall.
My name is Jacob, and my concentration is environmental science and sustainable business.
Hi, my name is Lex, and my concentration is the performance of self.
Hi, I'm Gabrielle. My concentration is creative direction, production, and narrative through the arts, performance, and written word.
Hi, my name is Karina Gummis, and my concentration is in journalism and Latin American studies, with an emphasis in human rights, collective memory, and political violence.
Hi, my name is Steph.
And it goes on and on. Really prepared. You know what, folks? The rest of the world, China, Brazil, they're laughing at us. All right, we'll be back in 2.5 minutes. where it's at. I know where that is. That's the 3rd floor of a building in West Palm Beach, Florida. I know exactly what that location. Mad Dog wearing the little NASX hat. There's Ben. There's the guys there. But hey, by the way, guys, I got you guys a whole slew of scratch-off lottery tickets. You win anything?
We got Ben won $50.
There you go. Okay.
So that's the big winner. I didn't really win much.
I think you have some more to go, so we'll keep folks
going. We'll let you know the results.
All right. Friday, you know what? Just went out and got a couple $100 or $150 of lottery tickets. Let them go have some fun. By the way, White Claw, the best flavor of White Claw bar none is peach. Just want to put that out there. Okay, folks, welcome back. Today, Steve Bannon has left us in the very capable hands of War Room White House correspondent Natalie Winters. Natalie, one of the youngest White House correspondents in history. Congratulations. You were out on Pebble Beach when a CNN reporter said something so asinine. Again, Donnie O'Sullivan, all he wants to do is gotcha BS. Let's take a look.
To the people, and I'm sure you see this online every single day, who say you don't deserve to be here because you're not a real journalist. What's your response to them?
Well, I'm pretty sure the group of people in there spent, 4 years covering for someone who was essentially dead, and that's being charitable in my description of him, a president by the name of Joe Biden. So to all those people who are apoplectic over having new media voices, you guys failed, and that's why we're here.
All right, that was a great response. Where did that come from? Did you have that planned? Because that was a mic drop moment, Natalie.
No, I'm a real journalist and a real reporter. Unlike CNN, I don't have to waste days coming up with attempted gotcha questions. And like I always say, I think the truth just speaks for itself. Though I think the funniest part of that whole exchange, I actually taped with them for probably over 40 minutes or so. Got really in the weeds with a lot of what we focus on in the war room. And I made the point, which I think is very imperative. You don't really hear it a lot. I've done this in every interview that I've ever done with the legacy media. No one's ever printed it. But Joe Biden had his own rendition of new media, and that was the vast and robust government-funded and sanctioned censorship of the American people, including but not limited to colluding with media outlets, colluding with big tech platforms, including with the intelligence community, like the documents that Tulsi Gabbard just declassified. So I think what the White House is doing now is a much better, more transparent form of new media, whereas Joe Biden, I guess, trying to put a bunch of bureaucratic censors, who, by the way, we still don't really even know the names of, because no journalists even dared to ask about it. They just mocked us as conspiracy theorists for daring to even question it. I think that goes over with the American people much better than I think what the Biden regime was doing clandestinely and covertly.
Yeah, and to the credit, to the administration credit, Caroline Leavitt, Stephen Chung, who is the comms director, senior comms director, he realizes new media is where it's at. But people are upset with you, Natalie, and others, but you specifically. There's a New York Times article that said that you're a young, Trump-friendly, and you have a White House press pass, such a great time. But they're upset with you. Sometimes they're upset with you with what you're wearing. Now, Donnie O'Sullivan there, you look, here's another Daily Mail I pulled. You're in front of the White House. You look very respectable. I don't know what their problem is. And then they throw that picture of you. You're free to wear whatever the hell you want on your free time. Are they just jealous? Are they just nitpicky? What do you think it is?
Well, look, I think War Room has been the victim, though I guess we'll use the woke terminology, a survivor of countless attacks, every way, shape, and form, whether that's debanking, censorship, deplatforming, prison sentences, right? What they did to Stephen K. Bannon, going after our advertisers, trying to get us taken off YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So now that they really don't have the, powers of the state or these government-funded apparatuses to go after our show, what are they going to do? They're going to attack me for what I wear, for my age, for my, blonde hair. They don't really land. I think it's also part of a broader effort to really impugn the broader new media initiative to make us look unserious, and that what they're trying to do is import a bunch of North Korean style propagandists. So I guess the American iteration of that is a bunch of 24-year-old blonde girls who don't know what they're talking about. I think my record of reporting and breaking stories shared by members of Congress and the president himself, getting people fired, including but not limited to Chinese Communist Party spies, I'm very happy to have that as my record and as my resume. I think I've probably broken more stories than that CNN hack that interviewed me.
You're a very good journalist. You're great, you're very smart. And in the picture, throw that picture up one more time, that Daily Mail thing. And just, again, Kennedy wrote that. And look, I like Kennedy. She's funny. She came from MTV to say you're acting like a hostess from Hooters. That was kind of a cheap shot. Natalie, we're going to give the show to you. Have a great show. Have a great weekend. And we'll talk. Tell Steve we said we'll see you on Monday.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much for having me. And War Room Posse, it's Natalie Winters filling in today for Stephen K. Bannon. Friday, April 25th in the year of our Lord 2025. We've got a packed show, all things Act Blue, illegal alien invasions. And I want you guys I know we don't take any days off in the War Room, but just to remember that this is the weekend that I guess should have been for the White House Correspondents Association. If you want to get a good laugh, read the apoplexy that is plaguing, I guess, my colleagues here in D.C. about how the parties just aren't that great anymore because they don't have any money, because you guys wised up. You realize that we don't have to watch their propaganda, their BS. And before we play the cold, if you guys just want to toss up real quick, just a glorious quote from Politico where people are saying that the White House Correspondents' Dinner this weekend, they're going to be hugging each other just a little bit longer to try to prevail over, dictator Trump. Absolutely wild stuff. Denver, let's roll the cold.
Where the is the accountability when a judge orders someone to be brought back from El Salvador? Why is no one enforcing it? Where is rule of law? They have no problem deporting terrified families, but when a judge tells them to undo the damage, they just don't do it. This isn't about law and order. It's about control, about who deserves protection and who the system sees as disposable. If we ignore this, if they can ignore court orders for immigrants, what else can they ignore next? Justice without enforcement is a lie. We either fight back now or get used to living in a system that chooses cruelty.